Okay, we're down to Psalm 37 and verse 27. Psalm 37, 27. This verse, as I mentioned last time right at the end, pretty well sums up the Christian life. If you had to sum it up in a sentence, this would be a good one. Depart from evil and do good, and dwell forevermore. So if you can just do that, depart from evil and then do good, then you'll dwell forevermore on the earth here, in a blessed existence, in a blessed habitation, and then forever with the Lord in heaven. First of all, let's look at the first three words, depart from evil. And I got quite a bit to say about this. To depart means to go apart or away with its derived senses. It means to go asunder, to part or separate from each other, to take leave of each other, to go away from a person or place, to take one's leave. And then it's also to withdraw, turn aside, diverge, deviate, or desist from a course of action, etc. To depart from, which is why I've gone down this far, because that's the phrase that's being used, to depart from. To depart from means to leave, abandon, to cease to follow, observe, or practice. And then it actually it quotes Proverbs 3:7 as the usage of that word, which we'll get into in just a minute. So if you basically wanted to sum it up, in other words, to depart from evil means that we need to separate ourselves from evil situations and from evil people. And both of those things are necessary to walk a Christian life, because it's going to be pretty hard to do good whenever you surround yourself with evil people or keep yourself in evil situations. So we must abandon our old life of sin and forsake it. This is part of the Christian life. It's not come as you are, it's come and then change to make you what God wants you to be. So this is why our church is different than a lot of churches out there, because a lot of other churches out there just says, hey, come on in, we take you just as you are, we're non-judgmental, we're accepting, and you don't have to change at all. We like to have everybody come in. And we don't like to have everybody come in. We like to have people come in that God has changed the heart of. So the motivation for departing from evil is the fear of the Lord. Let's look at Proverbs 3 and verse 7. Now, the reason why people don't depart from evil is because they don't have the motivation behind it, which is the fear of the Lord. We read in, you don't have to turn there, but in Romans 3, it says, I think it's verse 17 possibly, it says, or 18, there is no fear of God before their eyes, speaking of the wicked. So bad people out there, people that God has not saved, do not fear God, and therefore they don't depart from evil. Proverbs 3 and verse 7, it says, be not wise in thine own eyes, fear the Lord, and depart from evil. So if you know that God judges evil, and you fear his judgment, and you believe that his judgment is coming, then naturally you're going to depart from it if you believe that the Lord will judge you for it. Let's look at Proverbs 16 and verse 6. This is one of those good verses to remember, good principles to remember, to police ourselves. Because, your parents aren't always around watching what you do, and your boss isn't always around watching what you do, or, your pastor's not always around, and it's really up to the Christian to police himself, right? To examine himself, to prove himself, and to hold himself accountable to God's law. Proverbs 16 and verse 6 says, by mercy and truth iniquity is purged, and by the fear of the Lord men depart from evil. So there you have it again. The fear of the Lord is the motivation and what gives the ability to depart from evil. Wise men and fools are characterized by this very thing. The wise man departs from evil because he fears God, but the fool, on the other hand, he doesn't fear God, and therefore he doesn't depart from evil. He rages on full bore, doesn't have a care or concern in the world. He's not concerned about God's judgment or anybody else's good advice that they might be warning him with. Proverbs 14 and verse 16. Proverbs 14:16 says, a wise man feareth, and departeth from evil. But the fool rageth, and is confident. Now, a wise man fears in a certain way, right? Because we're told not to fear men, and we're told that God hasn't given us a spirit of fear. So the wise man doesn't fear men, and he doesn't fear men's opinions and fear what men are going to do to him or something, but he fears God. He fears God's judgment. And this is how you can tell a wise man. But the fool, on the other hand, rageth and is confident. You probably met, maybe younger people haven't met somebody like that, but older people probably met people like that. You see somebody that is just going down a destructive path, and everybody around them can see it, and you warn them about it. Maybe they drink heavily every day or something. You say, you are really heading for a brick wall, and no, it's fine. I got it under control, right? He goes out drinking every night and he's drinking and driving or something, and people are saying, one of these days, you're going to have an accident, you're going to kill somebody, you're going to be in big trouble. No, I know what I'm doing. He rages and is confident. He doesn't fear the Lord, and he doesn't want to hear anybody's good advice. Then fearing the Lord then leads to departing from evil. Then that in turn leads to departing from the snares of death. So there's kind of a progression. If you fear God, you don't go in the way of evil, and then you don't get into the snares, which ultimately lead to death. Proverbs 14 and verse 27. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, to depart from the snares of death. So there's all kinds of blessings in store for the person that fears God. It's not just an intellectual exercise or something. It's can literally save your life. And you think about my previous example. If you think about like young kids or something, you got some kid that's just kind of going out and gets his first job, and he's goofing around, and he's showing up late, and he's and you warn him, you're going to get fired. You're going to get fired. Oh, I'm not worried about it. He rages. He just continues on. He's confident, and people like that end up having to learn in the school of hard knocks. And Eric and I were just talking about this today. Wise people learn from other people's mistakes. And then people that are, not too stupid learn from their own mistakes. And then really dumb people don't even learn from them. They don't learn from anything. They just keep repeating the same stupid things. The path that righteous men walk is one that leads away from evil. So if you want to learn to depart from evil, I guess one way would be find a really wise person, find a good and godly person, and just watch the way that he lives. And just kind of follow him. Walk right along the same path that he's walking, and chances are you are going to be departing from evil. Look at Proverbs 16 and verse 17. Proverbs 16 and verse 17. The highway of the upright is to depart from evil. You see, he's on the road that is not heading towards perdition, but is heading towards, heading away from evil, heading towards righteousness. He that keepeth his way preserveth his soul. So if you stay on that good highway, then you're going to preserve your soul.
Excuse me, Pastor.
Yes.
He that keepeth his way, the man that keepeth his way,
Mm-hmm.
but not God's way or anything like that.
If he keeps his way in that he
Stays in the right path.
he directs his way in other words, if you keep something, you're protecting it, or you're like God told them to dress and keep the garden, keep it in good order. If you keep your way, if you're careful with the way that you go, and you keep yourself staying on the straight and narrow.
So he refers to the upright.
Yeah, I think so. He that keepeth his way preserveth his soul, because it says the highway of the upright is to depart from evil. He that keepeth his way preserveth his soul. Yeah, of course, the way of the upright is God's way, right? But I mean, the he there does refer back to the upright. Yeah. So the way, this highway, is that straight and narrow way which leadeth unto life. Remember that in Matthew chapter 7. Matthew chapter 7. This verse tells us why the Christian life is difficult. because there's a multitude of ways that you can live your life out there, and a whole ton of things that you can do, and people that you can associate with, and there's whole millions of women and men out there that you could marry, and there's all kinds of things you could do, right? And those are all just kind of lumped into the broad way. And pretty much any way you turn, you could go, your life could go almost any direction, and just about every one of them is the wrong way. But there's only one right way to go. I'm not saying there's only one right person to marry, but there's only one type of person that you should marry, you know, a good and godly man or a good and godly woman. So it is very constricted. They say that people say that all roads lead to God. No, that is absolutely false. All roads lead to hell except for one, and the one road leads to God. The world has it totally backwards. Matthew 7 and verse, let's read 13 and 14. Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way. I just can't help but thinking of Broadway, right? You've heard of Broadway, right? New York City, where all the musicals and things are done, and you know, all the evil that happens in Hollywood. And if you just kind of think about Hollywood as Broadway and is associated with Broadway, it's just, I think sometimes the Lord must have a sense of humor or something, where you got the, you know, Broadway being the way that leads to destruction. Broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and look at this, and many there be which go in thereat. You see, the thing is, most people are going in the wrong direction. You look around, especially today, most people are not going in the way of righteousness. In one way or another. They might have one thing or the other right, but in general, most people are going the wrong way. Because straight is the gate. Now, I used to think, a long time ago, that straight, that was S-T-R-A-I-G-H-T, right? That the way is straight, like it's not crooked, it doesn't deviate, but it's S-T-R-A-I-T, meaning constricted, like a straight jacket. So God's way, yes, is restrictive. But it's not because he's mean, it's because he loves us. He doesn't want us going off into the ditch, onto the right hand or the left hand. Because straight is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. That's why sometimes the Christian life is a lonely life, because there are not very many people that are walking on the way of righteousness. Not very many. And the closer that you walk, and the closer to the center of that road that you walk, between the right and the left, between the broad ways which lead to destruction, the closer you get, the lonelier you're going to be. Because there are fewer and fewer and fewer people that are going to be totally committed to God. But it's certainly worth it, the closer you get anyway. None of us, I'm not saying that I or anybody else that I know has arrived, but the closer you get, the lonelier you'll be. We need to completely steer clear of them. This is the thing that I like to, oh, well, isn't that nice? Look at that. Folded that page right in half.
Looks like my Bible.
I need to take lessons from you on Bible care. You know, then my Bible would look nice.
Bible care website.
Yeah.
Send you the link.
Yes. Oh my. Okay, Proverbs chapter 4. This is, what was I saying?
This is why you.
This is why I like to err on the side of caution in my own life, right? I don't like to walk right up to the edge and take a look, take a peek over or something like that. And really, as a pastor, I can't live like that anyway. I remember something Conrad told me, and I told you this before, that he said to me that, you know, when you see geese flying in a V, you ever seen that? By the way, you know why that the one side of the V is always longer than the other side?
No.
There's more geese on that side. Yeah. So anyway, that's terrible. So anyway, but you see the geese flying in a V, and you get the lead goose, right? And he's sort of paving the way, and where he's going, all the geese are following, but the other geese are out on the sides, right? And if you think about it as the pastor being the leader, and this is what Conrad told me, that church members are generally going to follow you sort of in a V, and some of them are going to be to the right of you, or some of them are going to be to the left of you. And so as a pastor, you really can't just live life on the edge and walk right up Like, if my hair was allowed to be like halfway down on my ears or something, but not totally covering them, and I'm not saying that's exactly the standard. But anyway, as a pastor, mine's going to be cropped off nowhere near my ears, right? Or something. Because I don't want, because if my hair is covering my ears, then somebody else is going to say, well, pastor's hair is covering, I can have mine, halfway down my back or something. So just an example. Or whatever, drinking alcohol. Somebody else get away with drinking 2 or 3. I only drink 1. So that's why I do what I do. But anyway, we don't want to get close to that edge no matter who we are. Where was I? Proverbs 4. Proverbs 4. Oh, because the point was, that's what Conrad said, getting back to that. He said that if you walk right up to the edge, and you can imagine if somebody's following you in a V, if you walk up to the edge to look over, and you haven't crossed the line yet, you're just there, well, guess what? The ones that were to the right of you, they've already fallen off, right? So the analogy was great, because it really drove home to me. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you got to be careful. Okay, Proverbs 4:14 through 15. Enter not into the path of the wicked, and go not in the way of evil men. Avoid it, pass not by it, turn from it, and pass away. It's like God really wants you to know that you don't want to go near that evil way. Because he doesn't say it just once. He could have just said, hey, avoid that. Or he could have said, just, don't pass by it or turn from it. But he says it 4 different ways. Avoid it, pass not by it, don't even get close to it. Turn from it. As a matter of fact, you might even be tempted to go over there and get close to it. So turn from it. Go in opposite direction and pass away. So anytime you have you have a temptation to do something, you flee youthful lust. Just stop yourself before you get too close to the edge and where you do something that you'll regret. Now, departing from evil is an evidence of one's election. So this is certainly not the only way you know that you're on your way to heaven, but this is one way that you can be have assurance that you are one of God's children, is if you do depart from evil. In 2 Timothy 1 and verse 19. I really like this verse. I remember this the first time that somebody pointed this verse out to me, Pastor Boffey, a long time ago, because I was talking about, we had there was a family in the church, and they ended up leaving the church and being excluded. But before they went out, they were talking about how these Arminians, they got all this holy living stuff, and then it seems like we have all the truth and they have all the holiness, and like you're pitting the two against each other or something, and it's not one or the other, it's both. 2 Timothy 2 and verse 19. It says, nevertheless, the foundation of God standeth sure, having this seal, the Lord knoweth them that are his, and let every one that nameth the name of Christ depart from iniquity. So there you have election, the Lord knoweth them that are his, and so God knows who are his, right? But we don't necessarily know who are his, but how do we know who are his? Whenever we see people departing from iniquity, right? Then we can see who are God's and who are not. Or we have pretty good indication anyway. So not only should we depart from evil, but we should also depart from evildoers and tell them to depart from us. So sometimes it's not enough just to depart from them because they like to kind of tag along, and sometimes you got to tell them to hit the road. Let's look at a few verses here. Psalm 6 and verse 8. This especially becomes important for a new convert, because whenever a new convert comes to the faith, he may well need to start telling some people, maybe after you've witnessed to them and they don't want anything to do with your religion, it's time to tell them, you know what, we need to separate company, because if you don't, you're going to end up going back into your old ways. Psalm 6 and verse 8. Depart from me, all ye workers of iniquity, for the Lord hath heard the voice of my weeping. This is what David said. He's basically saying exactly what Jesus is going to say at the last day. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. David's just telling him ahead of time, get away from me. I don't want to be anywhere near you, and the Lord tells you that. Look at Psalm 101 and verse 4. Psalm 101 and verse 4. Psalm 101:4, a froward heart shall depart from me. I will not know a wicked person. I'll tell you, that's a good verse to remember. A godly person like David says, I will not know a wicked person. He was not going to hang around wicked people. And maybe that's why I just don't have a lot of, I have my own trouble in my life. Everybody does. But I don't have trouble in my life like some people that I know. I know people that just seem like they just always have some kind of controversy. There's just trouble and problems and strife. And it's just because they just put themselves out there and they hang out with reprobates. And I just, if you just adopt that attitude that I don't want to hang out with people like that, your life just becomes a lot more, it's just easy. You don't have to deal with other people's problems. And so there's just so much that just sticking close to the Lord will save you from. Look at Psalm 119 and verse 115. Psalm 119, verse 115. Depart from me, ye evildoers, for I will keep the commandments of my God. If you're going to keep God's commandments, you're not going to do so by hanging out with wicked people. So you get rid of the wicked, and then you keep God's commandments. And you know what? If they want to hang out with you, well, come on over. I kind of like what you said. If you got people at work, and if they want to hang out with you and they want to be friends, okay, come over to my house. Come over here. Look at these scriptures on the wall. Let's talk about something. Let's talk about God or something. Or you're going to see. You're going to come to my turf. I'm not going to hang out with you at the bar or something like that. I like that. I think that's a good attitude.
What about family members?
That gets a little trickier sometimes. Yeah.
Right.
It just depends how. If I had family that was just wicked, I would tell them, I'm not having anything to do with you. It's our family members are not of the same faith, and that's one thing. If you're never going to speak to somebody that's only of people that are the same faith, of course you're never going to speak to anybody. So, I'm not saying that, but yeah, but if I had if my brother turns out to be a sodomite or something, you know what? Which is not going to happen, obviously. But yeah, depart from me. You know what?
Listens to these Bible studies. He's got words
Yeah.
Using me as examples.
Yeah.
Sodomite. I'm a married man.
Yeah. No, I was just. That's obviously a ridiculous example, but.
That's true.
Yeah, that does
but not
happen.
his brother,
Yeah.
but
No.
married men who get married for a cover.
Yeah.
It's kind of like some of the wicked that get into the church that aren't supposed to be there. They use it like you taught a few Sundays ago as a cover for.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, two women that have been married for decades and then they got divorced. And
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've known a couple different people that they're divorced. The women that divorced their husbands and ended up being lesbians.
Yeah, that seems to be I've run into that.
I've heard of that too. Yeah, it's weird. Anyway, but let's look at Psalm 139 and verse 19. Psalm 139 and verse 19. Surely thou wilt slay the wicked, O God. Depart from me, therefore, ye bloody men. Just, if the fire is going to fall and get them, you probably don't want to be too close to them, right? You could end up being collateral damage. And the problem with it is, if we don't tell the wicked to depart from us, what's going to happen is their wickedness is going to rub off on us. Right? 1 Corinthians 15 and verse 33. It doesn't work the other way around. Your righteousness does not rub off on the wicked. If you got to send your kids to public school, okay, but don't do it saying, well, because I want my kids to be a good example to the other kids and to help clean this place up. No, that is not going to happen. I am absolutely certain of it. 1 Corinthians 15 and verse 33. I don't know, why am I even taking all this time turning to it? I could just quote it for you. But, be not deceived, evil communications corrupt good manners. And it's interesting that he prefaces this verse with, be not deceived. Because a lot of people, if you tell them, hey, if you hang out with those friends of yours, they are going to corrupt you. Oh, no, it won't happen to me. Right? Be not deceived. This will happen. It will happen to any of us. And sometimes things like that, it's insidious and it creeps up on you. And I've known of people that were excluded that the people that they hung out with a lot were ungodly people, friends from the past or whatever, and it eventually and they get bad information from these people, and these people have bad attitudes and they're getting bad advice, and you know who I'm talking about. I mean, it happens, and before you know it, the person's they're just gone, and it just started out with spending too much time with the wrong people. Proverbs 13 and verse 20. It says, he that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed. So if you pick wise friends, then they will help to lift you up and build you up. But if you pick fools for friends, you're going to go down with them. But you do want to beware of something, and this is not, I'm not telling you to not do this because of this, but just beware that if you do depart from evil in a wicked generation like we live in, you will make yourself a prey. You will make yourself a target for wicked people. We are told this in Isaiah 59 and verse 15. This is not a reason not to do it. It's just, beware. It'd be like sending a soldier into battle and, not telling him that, hey, you could be killed, right? I mean, it could happen, so be ready. Isaiah 59 and verse 15. It says, yea, truth faileth, and he that departeth from evil maketh himself a prey. And the Lord saw it, and it displeased him that there was no judgment. So there are times when a society gets so bad and so corrupt that whenever you do depart from evil, you stick out like a sore thumb, and especially if you make other people feel uncomfortable, and maybe they're okay going along to get along until you stop doing it, and then all of a sudden they feel a little bit uneasy about that, and then you can become the target. Now fools, of course, will not depart from evil. Proverbs 13 and verse 19. So when you see a person that is going the wrong direction, you tell him about it, and he doesn't hear you, well, then you have met a fool. Proverbs 13 and verse 19. It says, the desire accomplished is sweet to the soul, but it is abomination to fools to depart from evil. It's not only they don't feel like doing it, it's like they hate the very idea of departing from evil. Like horrible sins are an abomination to us, and it just makes us disgusted and we hate it, right? Well, fools, just the very idea of departing from evil is like, oh, well, it just makes me want. I mean, I'm getting nauseous just even thinking about that. It's just a difference in who their father is. But. Now, even when they're punished severely, their foolishness won't depart from them. This is the nature of fools. Proverbs 17:22. It's such an abomination to fools to depart from evil, they will resist it with everything that they have. Proverbs 27 verse 22, though thou shouldest bray a fool in a mortar among wheat with a pestle, yet will not his foolishness depart from him. It's like one of those, it's like a stone bowl with a little stone rod thing, and you just smash the stuff. You can just grind wheat into flour in this thing. And you could take that and figuratively do it to a fool, and he could just get reprimanded and judged and punished, and just does the same stupid thing over and over again. Now, if I haven't convinced you to depart from evil yet, maybe the words of the Son of God might give you pause. Look at Matthew 7:23. People that love to do iniquity so much, well, okay, keep doing it. You're going to get a little message from Jesus on Judgment Day. Matthew 7 and verse 23. Then will I profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. So, better to depart from evil than to be told to depart from Jesus Christ on the final day of judgment. Matthew 25 and verse 41. Matthew 25:41. Someday Jesus is going to have all nations gathered before him. He's going to separate them out, wicked on the left hand, righteous on the right hand. And he's going to tell the people on the left hand, and these shall, he says there in verse 41, depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels, and these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous unto life eternal. So, not a good idea. You don't want to depart from evil? Well, you're going to have some big time trouble coming to you. Now, let's look at the next part of the verse. Psalm 37. And what verse are we on? I already forgot. 27? Yeah, that's right. Depart from evil and do good. Okay, so it's not just enough to stop doing evil. We got to start doing good. We got to do good in place of evil. Psalm 34 and verse 14. And this is why a lot of times people fail at trying to clean up their lives from alcoholism or whatever. A lot of those types of things is because they never replace whatever the bad behavior, the vice was, they don't replace that with something else. And if you don't do that, then you'll end up going back to it a lot of times. Or that's why diets fail a lot of times. They'll get on a diet and they'll lose some weight, but they don't continue in that way. They don't make changes to their eating habits, and then they fall back, right? And so it's not enough to just depart from evil, but you have to replace it with good. Right? Psalm 34 and verse 14. It says, depart from evil and do good, seek peace, and pursue it. So we see here once again the contrast there. Departing from evil and doing good. It is said that nature hates a vacuum. And it's true of our human nature as well. Our human nature can't just stop doing something and not have something else to fill that interest or that time or whatever it is. If we merely stop doing evil, we don't replace it with good, then we'll revert back to doing evil. As they say, there's another saying that idle hands are the devil's workshop. I don't know if you've ever heard that one before. But that's how people get themselves into trouble. When they have too much time on their hands, then they end up getting themselves into trouble. That's why it's a good idea to keep your kids busy, right? Because when your kids, the so-called latchkey kids of the 1970s, when their moms were out working and their dads were out working, and the kids would get home and the keys under the latch, or they'd let themselves into the house. Well, guess what? Nobody's around. And kids get into trouble whenever they've got nothing to do and nobody to watch over them. So we got to put off the old man. We got to put on the new man. This is key to departing from evil and doing good. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 22 through 24. It's so funny. Sometimes I just wonder what happens to parents when they have kids. It's like, do they forget that what they used to do when they were kids, or something like, oh, I leave my kids alone, they won't get in any trouble. Like, what did you do when you were left alone by yourself when you were a teenager? I mean, just think about it. Ephesians 4, 22 through 24. But my kids are different. They're good kids. Okay. See how that turns out for you. Ephesians 4, 22 through 24. That you put off concerning the former conversation the old man, which is corrupt according to the deceitful lusts, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind, and that you put on the new man, which after God is created in righteousness and true holiness. So this is basically Paul is saying what David was saying back there in Psalm 37. Depart from evil, put off the old man, and then do good, put on the new man, and put on the works that God has created for the new man to do. Like it says in Ephesians 2:10, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto good works, which God hath before ordained that we should walk in them. Now, Paul goes on to give some examples of exactly what I'm saying here. And basically, I'm saying it because Paul said it. He's not backing me up. I'm just telling you what he's saying. He gives 3 examples here of this principle, departing from evil and replacing the evil with good. The first one's found in verse 25 of Ephesians 4. Wherefore, putting away lying, speak every man truth with his neighbor, for we are members one of another. So if you got a problem with lying, then you got to start speaking truth. And so that's stopping lying, departing from evil, and then being completely honest with people, that's doing good. The next one he gives is in verse 28. You got to stop stealing, which is that's departing from evil. But it's not just enough to stop stealing, then you have to start working. Because think about it. If you are a thief and you stop stealing, but you don't start working, what are you going to end up doing again when you don't have any money? You're going to steal again, right? So you've got to start working. Verse 28. Let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands the thing which is good, that he may have to give to him that needeth. And then one more in verse 29. You have to stop using corrupt language, but not just that, start using good, wholesome, godly language. Verse 29. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. So if you were a person, especially in your former life, and you used the Lord's name in vain, you told dirty jokes, and you're that kind of guy, well, you will have to learn to clean up your language. And I guess maybe a good idea is every time a thought like that comes into your mind, maybe you think, okay, I'm going to go edify somebody. I'm going to say something good. I'm going to encourage somebody, or something like that. That might work.
But is there something wrong when some people also tell dirty jokes, right? I know some people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is it wrong to tell dirty jokes?
Wrong to tell dirty jokes?
At times.
I would say yes, generally. I mean, it depends on, I guess, everybody's version of a dirty, some dirty jokes to some people maybe aren't all that dirty, but it would depend. A truly dirty joke, if you're joking about fornication or sodomy or something like that, or you're using the Lord's name in vain, or just joking about a wicked thing. I don't like jokes about child molesters, pedophiles, and stuff. I don't think it's funny at all. I don't like jokes like that. So, yeah, I mean, if it says that fools make a mock at sin, so joking about sinful things, it shouldn't be done. No. But then again, and I'm not going to get into a full sermon on this verse, but what the world considers corrupt communication isn't necessarily corrupt communication either. You know, what God considers, there's plenty of things that God would say is corrupt communication that the world would think is just fine, and there's plenty of things the world says are corrupt communication that God doesn't have an issue with, right? And I'm not going to say the words, but saying the SH word or something, that is not corrupt communication by biblical standards, right? It's a stronger word for other synonyms like manure or feces or stool or poop or whatever, you know. But we have strong emotions, and we use strong words to express strong emotions, and so there's nothing wrong necessarily with using that word in certain contexts or whatever. And there's plenty of words like that that are not corrupt communication. I mean, the Bible has to define what corrupt communication is. So
you gave an example of corrupt communication earlier when you said that where most people think all roads lead to God.
Yeah. Or
everyone's got a spark of the divine.
Yeah.
Or God loves everyone. These are some of the most wicked, foulest things to the ears of God he can hear.
Mm-hmm.
And then people who say that would never use an SH word, though.
Yeah.
It's always laughable.
Yeah, yep. That's right, yep. And really, honestly, I'd rather hear somebody use the F word than say the Lord Jesus Christ's name in vain.
That's right.
Or absolutely.
That's right.
I mean, that using the Lord's name in vain is, I mean, that is corrupt. That is the most corrupt
That's
form
right.
of communication, and most people don't think a thing about that. You know, but they'd be offended if they hear the F word or something.
Or the N word.
Or the N word,
Or the
yeah.
N-word.
Think about that, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you can use the Lord Jesus Christ's name in vain, and no big deal. You use the N word and you're in big trouble.
You're
you
banned
know?
from TV.
Yeah, yeah.
You're banned from the
Yeah.
books. Wow, good example.
Not that I don't like the N word and I don't use it, but still,
Low perspective,
which is
pure
worse?
people.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Think about it.
That angers me. Is there a verse about angry in here? That's really
Yes,
got
be
me.
ye angry and sin not.
You're right, though.
Yeah. Be ye angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath. You're all right until you go to bed. So if you want to be mad, go ahead. But
Fume for a while
yeah,
at dinner.
yeah. All right, we should do good on all men as we have opportunity. Because remember what he says there. Depart from evil and do good. So when do we do good? Who do we do good to? Well, to everybody that you have opportunity to do so. Galatians 6 and verse 10. Galatians 6:10. As we have therefore opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially unto them who are of the household of faith. So the objects of our doing good is pretty broad. We can do good unto everybody that we have opportunity to do so. And we must do good not only to our friends, but also to our enemies. Look in Matthew 5 and verse 44. Now this doesn't mean that you have to be, all lovey-dovey towards your enemies and treat them like your best friend, but I mean, just a prime example. Maybe you have an enemy and you're driving down the road and he's broken down. It's a frigid winter night or something. Well, pick him up, right? You would do good to him, just like anybody else. Matthew 5 and verse 44. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. That's where the rubber meets the road in Christianity. And you have to, yeah, that's right.
Wow.
You have to do good to them that hate you. And I guess if you're out to make them irritated, the best way to do that is to do good to them, right? You heap coals of fire on their head. So, I guess in that case, you could probably harm them by doing good to them, if that's what you want to do. Yeah.
This is referring to, like, you mean by doing good to people who, would you do good to a person who was a sodomite or something? Would you, like, stop if he was a sodomite or something?
Yeah, I would say, in the case, if the person was in, like the Good Samaritan, like if the Good Samaritan found a man that was robbed by thieves and left half dead, and he took care of him because the man was in basic need of the basic needs of life. So yeah, if I found a sodomite laying there beat up or something, yeah, I'd take him to the hospital or something like that. Am I gonna hang out with him? No. Am I gonna invite him over for dinner? No. But I would do good to him in the sense of, helping him out if he was in desperate straits or something. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Pastor Wagner, I have
Yeah.
a question. Because earlier you mentioned that if you do good to your enemies, like you're heaping coals on their
Mhm.
head, but isn't it wrong that you have that intention of annoying the person? To
Yeah.
do
Well,
good?
I was kind of saying that tongue in cheek, right? So I mean I'm not saying, yeah, if your intention is to harm them, then you shouldn't secretly, I'm going to do good to them just to make them mad or something,
Right, it's like,
yeah.
But there's
Right.
that intention, then
Yeah.
that's not doing good.
But it can have quite an impact on people that are your enemies, that when you don't return the evil for evil, when you turn that over to God, and that's what basically here Maddie, here's an answer to your question. It's in Romans chapter 12, which is kind of what I said, but I mean you got a Bible verse that basically says it. he says in Romans 12 and verse 19, let's go back to verse 18, because this really gets the whole context of what I've been talking about. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. That means you give that away to God. You don't take that wrath to yourself. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. I don't know, if I didn't have this verse in here, I certainly should have, because it's pretty much, this says it. Yeah, exactly. I don't even think I do have it in there, but that's kind of funny. But anyway, there's your answer. So if but notice what it doesn't say. You know, you don't have to invite him over for dinner. You don't have to be best friends with him. You don't have to, if he is a sodomite and he's talking about his filthiness, you certainly don't have to entertain that. You don't have to be nice to him or show him respect in that situation. But if he's hungry, give him something to eat. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. So when it comes to just basic human necessities, yes, we should do good unto anybody. As Christians, we're commanded to do good. So it probably goes without saying, but Paul told Timothy to tell the rich people in his church that they ought to be doing good in 1 Timothy 6 and verse 18. He says, verse 17, charge them that are rich in this world that they be not high-minded, nor trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God, who giveth us richly all things to enjoy, that they do good, and they be rich in good works, ready to distribute, willing to communicate. So, I guess sometimes you might think that that's just too basic of a thing for the Bible to tell us to do good, but it does. And that probably tells us that we forget to do that, which is why God reminds us. Hebrews 13 and verse 16, but to do good and to communicate forget not, for with such sacrifices God is well pleased. So, if you want to give God a sacrifice, like I think a lot of people think that our religion is just too simple and boring, and it would be nice if there was some pomp and circumstance and we could get up there and burn some incense or do something really cool or whatever. Well, if you want to do something that's really going to be a great sacrifice, like you're just, slew a ram and burnt the thing on the altar or something, you want to do a sacrifice to God, just do good. Just do what he says. And there you go. That's just about as good as all the whole burnt offerings and sacrifices that you could ever offer. 1 Peter 3 and verse 11. 1 Peter 3 and verse 11. That kind of thinking reminds me of Naaman the Syrian, whenever he was leprous and he went to Elijah the prophet. I think it was Elijah or Elisha. I think it was Elijah. He went to Elijah to be cleansed of his leprosy, and Elijah told him, go dip 7 times in Jordan. And Naaman gets in all a huff, and he walks on. He's like, I got rivers in Syria that are better than this Jordan River. He's all upset about it. And then his servant says, well, hey, if he would have told you to do some great thing, you'd have done it, right? Well, yeah. Well, then go dip in Jordan 7 times and be healed. Sometimes God just wants you to do the simple things, and we want to do some grand thing, and,
That's right.
he just wants us to just do the simple thing. James tells us that if we... Did I ever read? I don't think I read. 1 Peter 3:11. Dearly beloved, I beseech you as strangers and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lusts, which war against the soul.
1 Peter 3:11.
1 Peter 3:11. That was 2:11, but that really went along with what I was saying. Abstain from fleshly lust. I was just going to say, that's doing good, right? So, 3:11. What's 3:11 say? It says, let him eschew evil and do good. Let him seek peace and ensue it. So there you go. Do good. James tells us that if we know to do good and we don't do it, it's sin. James 4 and verse 17. James 4:17. Therefore to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. So there's certain things that could be, there's 2 sides to this. So there are certain things that maybe for one person wouldn't be a sin because they didn't know enough to do the good. but you know enough to do the good, whatever that might be. And if you don't do something that you know you're supposed to do that's good, then to you it's sin. And then on the other side of the coin, you have things that might not be sinful, but if you are convinced they're sinful and you do them anyway, then it's sin to you. Like maybe certain people think that it's wrong to eat meat or something. This is Paul's example in Romans 14. And if you're convinced for whatever reason that it's wrong, it's a sin to eat meat, well then guess what? For you, it is a sin to eat meat because you violated your conscience, and that's the sin, is to go against conscience. So you got kind of two sides of that coin there, where you have things that maybe not in and of themselves are sinful or not sinful, but it could be sinful for you to do or not do them, depending on what your conscience says.
Pastor, why does our conscience factor into that? You know, we've God's law, the natural law and stuff. This is right, this is wrong, period.
Yep.
Why is it that it's sin if we go against our conscience?
That's a good question. It is. I mean, Romans 14 tells us that it is. But why is it? I guess that's a good question. Especially, why would it be something that isn't sinful in and of itself?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe that I'm just kind of speculating. God has given us a conscience and an idea of right and wrong, and if we would violate conscience on something that isn't even sinful, if that's okay to do that, to go against something that you think is sinful, then it's going to lead you into doing other things that are sinful, I suppose, where God's giving you that conscience for a reason, though that conscience needs to be instructed. And I guess that's the best that I can come up with at this point, anyway.
It sounds like if you look at that woman, the lust after her, you commit adultery already.
Mm-hmm.
So in and of itself, the sin is the adultery. Mm-hmm. But Jesus is saying you look at her with lust. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like doing it.
It is doing it in your heart. In your heart, yeah,
and
in
so
your mind.
And so your conscience is committing a sin in your heart. And here, would you say that's a parallel text, sort of?
Not exactly, because in that case you actually are committing the sin in your mind, whereas with the conscience thing, you're going against something that your mind thinks is wrong. So I wouldn't say it's exactly the same, but yeah, it's a good question. I have to think about that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Some people think that masturbation is a sin, but there's nothing in the Bible that really says that it's a sin, right?
Right.
So, but what if the kid wants, how do you say it, like to get rid of, just to fight his conscience? Is that right? Mm-hmm. Will he be sinning to try to say it's not a sin and I can do it?
That could,
like,
yeah.
I don't know.
That would be a good example. If somebody's convinced that masturbation is a sin, then for them it would be a sin to go against their conscience. Yeah. But if they, watch my blog on the topic or something and then realize it's not, and they're okay with it, then it's not. It wouldn't be a sin. It wouldn't be a conscience issue with it.
At that point, their conscience has been trained.
Yes. Right. Yep.
So you can train your conscience?
Absolutely, yeah. Guide thine heart in the way. He that trusteth in his heart is a fool. So sometimes our hearts get all messed up, and especially if you came out of a very restrictive religion or something where all kinds of things are sinful, dancing and playing cards and smoking cigarettes and who knows what else. And so you got, all those things where, for that Christian, maybe all those things would be sinful because at that point, they're convinced it's wrong. But when you show them, hey, it's not a sin to dance, or it's not a sin to play cards or something like that, then they're like, oh, okay, it's not a sin, then they could do it without sinning. Yeah. Now, let's see, where was it? Beware. When you set your heart to doing good, evil will be always present with you. So it's not just as simple as saying, okay, I'm not going to do bad anymore, I'm going to start doing good, because we have this fallen nature that is constantly trying to drag us down. Romans, until the resurrection, we're going to have to deal with this. Romans chapter 7, verse 21. Romans 7 and verse 21. I find then, Paul says, I find then a law that when I would do good, evil is present with me. That's why it's so hard to do good. And even when we start to do good for a while, that's why it's so easy to fall off the wagon and revert back to the old ways, because we still have the flesh that's constantly trying to pull us back and take us away from the Lord and his ways. But here's the reward for doing good. That God will do good unto you if you be good. Psalm 125 and verse 4. Psalm 125 and verse 4. Do good, O Lord, unto those that be good, and to them that are upright in their hearts. I think that's a good prayer to pray. Do good, O Lord, unto them that be good. Okay, and then let's just get the last part of the verse. Depart from evil and do good, and dwell forevermore. So the result of departing from evil and doing good is dwelling forevermore. And like a lot of things, we can see a temporal fulfillment of this, and we see an eternal fulfillment of this. Those that depart from evil and do good have the evidence in their lives that they will dwell forever with God. Jesus said in John 14, 1 through 3, John 14, 1 through 3, that if we believe in him, we have a mansion reserved in heaven for us. John 14, 1 through 3. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. So we will dwell forevermore in the mansion that Christ has reserved for us in heaven. It's funny, it's just not pertinent at all, but Eric and I have been working on the house, and I don't know if I ever showed you the video of the Coleman liquidators, the guy that sold the mobile homes, and it was a funny advertisement that he made years ago. But anyway, one of the lines in that thing, and what I keep saying is, it's a mobile home, it's not a mansion. So, some of them have stains. We cover that up. I'll have to show you. If I've never showed you that video, you'll get a kick out of it. But anyway, I keep telling them the great thing or the bad thing about mobile homes is they're made cheaply and stuff comes apart really easily. And the good things about mobile homes is they're made cheaply and stuff comes apart really easily. So it's easy to demo stuff and get it out of there and rebuild. Anyway, Revelation 21 and verse 3. It says, I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them, and be their God. So if we depart from evil, then this verse is talking about us, dwelling forever with God, dwelling forevermore. Those that depart from evil people are promised that God will dwell with them in this life, in time. 2 Corinthians 6, 14 through 18. This is the promise to everybody, every person that's out there in some false church. If he departs from that evil of that religion, the Lord will dwell with him. 2 Corinthians 6, 14 through 18. Be not unequally yoked together with unbelievers, for what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness, and what communion hath light with darkness, and what concord hath Christ with Belial, or Belial, I'm not sure how that's pronounced, Or what part hath he that believeth with an infidel? And what agreement hath the temple of God with idols? For ye are the temple of the living God, as God hath said, I will dwell in them, and walk in them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Wherefore, come out from among them, and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you, and I will be a father unto you, and ye shall be my sons and daughters, saith the Lord Almighty. So people that are out there trapped in a false religion, when you come out of that thing, the Lord receives you, even though you'll be evil spoken of by the people that were a part of it. Now those that are evil shall not dwell with God, because God cannot dwell with evil. That's what it says there in Psalm 5 and verse 5. The wicked shall not stand in God's sight. Psalm 5 and verse 4. For thou art not a God that hath pleasure in wickedness, neither shall evil dwell with thee. So there's going to be a lot of people out there that are not going to be dwelling with God. And like I said, there's also an eternal aspect of it. If we forsake evil and do good, we'll be blessed to dwell in the land of the living and not be cut off from the earth. In Psalm 37, a couple of verses here that speak to this, one of which we've already looked at, and one of which we will get to here soon in the next week or so. Psalm 37 and verse 3. It says, Trust in the Lord and do good, so shalt thou dwell in the land, and verily thou shalt be fed. In verse 29, The righteous shall inherit the land and dwell therein forever. Of course, this was a pertinent promise to Israel, because they had a physical land that they were going to inherit if they were good, and if they weren't good, they were going to be cast out of the land. So this was definitely true for them, but it's true for us dwelling in wherever our earthly land is. And if you want to think about it as the land of the living, just living here on this beautiful earth that God has given to us. If we're good, we'll be blessed to have a good long life on this earth, and if we're not, then we'll be cut off from it. I'll give you one more verse, Proverbs chapter 2, 21 through 22. It says, For the upright shall dwell in the land, and the perfect shall remain in it. But the wicked shall be cut off from the earth, and the transgressors shall be rooted out of it. So depart from evil and do good, so shalt thou dwell in the land.